Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. Today we'll be talking about time and how it relates to viewer and how you can use time ranges and time as a hierarchy as well. So we'll be talking quite a bit about time ranges and then overview of using time as a hierarchy in Stratum Viewer and when and why you would want to use either one of the two. And then using time, we'll talk a little bit more about time dimensions and the different types of dimensions that are available and how to use them. Time ranges was a new feature that was introduced in version 6 of Viewer. The new feature allowed users to specify their own time range for each column or row of data, depending on where the measure is, whether it's on your columns or rows, and where you can now assign a time range to that particular measure. You can right-click or just simply double-click on that measure heading, and you can get in and edit the time range for that particular column. If you select Edit, or just double click it again, you'll have a menu arise and it will then, as you can see, allow you to change the time range or the time unit for that particular measure. So in this case, we have a measure highlighted. We can then select the desired time unit for that measure and then select the time range in which we want to see and what time slice we want for that particular measure. In this case, we can see it's current year from January to current year, current month. And so that would be a common year-to-date scenario that you would set up. The time unit can be changed to daily, monthly, weekly, depending on what granular level of time that particular measure is available at. So you'll actually be able to change that. If you wanted to see daily buckets of data or weekly or monthly, you can drive that there by changing your time unit. Time ranges, again, you'll be able to set up time ranges as such so you can see year-to-date scenarios, month-to-date settings as well. Month-to-date would simply be current year, current month to current year, current month. Pretty simple to set that up. There's also offsets that are available so that if you have, in this case, current month minus 2 would be 2 months ago. So you can actually use these offsets to give you, to set yourself back, in this case, 2 spots or 2 months. And, this is normally used, for instance, if you have maybe you want 8 months ago and you don't see a time period called 8 months ago, you could set it to current month and put a -8 in there and roughly basically get the same thing. You can also put it forward too. So for open orders or forecasts, you can limit, how far out into the future the time range will go to. So these offsets can be pretty helpful in terms of getting you, the time range that you need, especially when you don't have that specific time range option available, such as 8, 9 months ago. Again, if you don't see it in that pull-down menu for a period, then I think your only option at that point would be to use the offset, which can be a lifesaver. So the offset is pretty important, and obviously it can be very it can really kind of help you out of certain pickles if you don't have the right time frames to choose from. I guess the big question would be, when do I use time range, and when do I use time as a hierarchy? So if you're constantly, frequently changing the time ranges and you just want to see different sections of time a lot, time range certainly is the way to go. If you want to see trends, weekly, monthly trends, you might want to use time as a hierarchy. It might look better and it might be easier to build. So I guess it kind of boils down to what exactly is your plan for that view. You can also set up a scenario where you can drill to view from time range to time as a hierarchy. So if you want to show the users an easy way to see the trend from a review, you can set up a drill to view to accomplish basically just that and make it easier on the users so that they can just click in on a link and lo and behold they have now that time range is being portrayed as a trend. So there's certainly ways to get easier time ranges or get the time as a hierarchy and show trends in an easier way for your users. Well, time range is turned on by default. So whenever you build a new view from scratch, time range is turned on. So if you wanted to use time as a hierarchy, as a dimension, you need to turn that off. And your first option there then would be to open up View Explorer and check Properties on the Measure Items folder. And in the Properties menu, the first option is time range. And then you'll set that to no. And when you do that, it's going to warn you that all measures will have to be reselected. So all your dimensions would still be intact, but you would have to reselect your measures. And so once you would do that, then you can go ahead and select the appropriate time dimensions that you want to use in that particular view. Here's a view, that I built using time as a dimension. And as you can see, if you want in this case, I'm showing a trend horizontally by month, and it's much cleaner and was easier to build in this case. It took less time, certainly, and was easier to build that out. So if you're using time in viewer dimensions, basically time is represented by a dimension. You might hear that, or a hierarchy, which is synonymous. So time is basically a hierarchy, and you can use it just like you can use product, customer, and company, and all the rest of your dimensions. So you can put it on your rows, you can put it on your columns, and it's all based on your stratum calendar definition. So you'll have time definitions, time hierarchies for calendar, and if you're running a fiscal, you'll have a separate set of time dimensions for your fiscal periods as well. What can you do with these time dimensions? Well, I think the biggest thing that we want to do is make it easier on yourself to show trends. So again, you can show trends in rows and columns. You can also use them in view filters. So if you want to show just certain years or months and hide that in your view filter, certainly you can do that. You can use time dimensions in graphs and calculations. So there's quite a bit you can do with them when time is represented as a dimension. There are different types of dimensions that you need to understand for time. There's absolute, there's based, and then there's rolling time dimensions. The absolute is basically the definition of actual time periods. So you'll use those when you refer to specific time periods, maybe an ad hoc view. Again, you can drill down from year to year periods. So let's take a look at that. I kind of want to make this a little more interactive. I'm going to pop over to a view here, and I'm going to create a new view from scratch. So now I'm in Viewer, and I'm going to check my Properties menu here on Time Range for my measure items here. If I check my properties, and indeed, Time Range is on. So let's turn that off. So in doing so, I can now select time as a dimension. So for instance, for my rows, maybe I'll select maybe a customer. So now I've got customer sold to in the mix. And then for my columns, I will select time. So my first, and I'll just go straight to the bottom normally, because that's where all my time, as you can see, they all start with the word year, or most of them do at least for the absolute time dimensions. So here's one, year, month. I'm going to select that. And now we have an absolute time dimension for my month. So I click OK. And now all I need is a measure. So I need to grab sales, dollars, or units. Okay, let's see, there's units. And there's dollars. All right, so we have those selected, and we add those in. I click exit, and I apply my changes. And right away, as you can see, I have my time up here on the top, and then my customers here on my rows. So in time, this is an absolute time dimension. And it just automatically shows you annualized sales for all my years that I have data for, at least for viewer, okay? And now time is drillable. So I can drill in on 2008, and now I've got a very quick and easy trend of my monthly sales data. See how easy that is to create? If I wanted to maybe filter on that time range or that hierarchy, I can do a filter edit, and I can filter on certain years. Maybe I want 2008, 2007 only. So now I'm just filtering on time, so that when I go back to and I scroll back up to year, I'm just showing those years now. The only drawback of using absolute time dimensions is if, pretending back, we're back in 2008, moving into 2009 would not happen automatically. I would actually have to go in and change this manually. And that's one of the drawbacks of using absolute time dimensions. They're not very dynamic. Okay. But as you can see, I can always get rid of the filter and, get all my years back. If I just want a quick and dirty view of all my years and then have the opportunity to drill in on any one of my years to see that monthly data, I have that ability. So that's what I do like about the absolute time dimension. It's quick, dirty, and it really allows a lot of good exploration of the data. I can click in on any one of these years and get a trend. If I click in on all of them, it's going to trend all the way across for all my years. So now it's starting with 05. Notice how I have now 100 columns going to the right. So if I expand that out, if I expand the view completely, now I'm going to have 100 columns of data here going all the way across. And notice how it's showing me all the years and months. So now I've got a full trend for all my years going on with subtotal columns. Okay. And expanding that out, I can see the data for all, the trend for all of that. And I could dump that down to Excel or, do whatever I need to do to analyze this data further. Okay. So by clicking in on year instead of specific years, if I click in on 05, it's just going to show me 05. But if I click in on year, it drills in on all my years, and I'm able to see a trend for all my years at that point. Okay, so I can do the same thing. If I don't want to use year, months, or whatever, if I want to use days, quarters, whatever, what have you, you have the ability to change that and have those available too. I've seen other customers do some cool things like this too. They notice how days is available as its own dimension. Okay, or weeks for that matter. I don't think my sales data isn't daily, I don't believe. So let me grab weeks, and I want to show you some tricks that I've seen other people use. So in this case now I've got year, months in my columns, right? We had that before. And now I've got my weeks, just weeks. Notice there's no year associated to these weeks. It's strictly just my weeks. And what's cool with that is that you can drill in on 2008, and then January, my months are now drillable. What's up with that? Well, I can drill in on January and see my weeks, my weekly data, or my daily data for that matter. And again, I don't think it's daily for my demo database isn't daily, but you can drill in. So now you've got this logical time path that people are drilling in on. 2007, maybe I want to see the weekly data for February. And you can put days under the weeks if you wanted to, and they could just keep drilling down into time and see how the time breaks out for each drill down. I think that's really cool. I like the way they do that. So you can use these single time dimensions that are not attached to the year, like year, months, and you can use those accordingly. And it makes it really cool. Another, I'll go grab months. Another cool thing you can do with these is you can put them on different axes. So if I grab my months and I'll use year months here, I could do some interesting things here too. For instance, if I want to show a specific customer a trend by month on the rows, and I'll hide weeks for now. And then for year, months, I'm going to hide the months portion of that dimension, meaning I won't be able to drill now from the year to months on my columns, but if I drill on a specific customer, I get a snapshot of that customer's history, because now I've got the rows, my months on my rows for that given customer. And look how clean that is. And I can see their history, 4 years of history here, or 3 years in current, pretty cleanly here, in one little quick snapshot. I like this. I like the fact that you can take your time dimension, your single time dimension, months, days, weeks, and you can put those on a different axes and then use your year portion of your year, months, and put that and use that on a different axis. So and you can totally do this. There's no reason why you're not able to do this. And if you want, you can even put weeks after your months. So again, you can have the same concept. I'll drill in on January, and now I've got just strictly January's weeks for those years. So that's really cool. I really think that that's underused and underutilized, is this ability to, to stack up and use these dimensions, these time dimensions accordingly. I'm also going to show you, I'm going to go into my columns here, and I'm going to show you another trick that you can do here, and that would be to make this view more dynamic. And to do that, I'm going to use my year-based, month-based view, or time dimension. So now I've got that selected. And I'm going to drag that up to the top of my columns, and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to filter on my years. I'm going to do a member list filter on my years for current and last year. So now I'm trying to make this view more dynamic, and I get this, right? Another cool thing I could do is use my display text properties to just show the year instead of current and last year. It'll actually say the year there. And then I'll get rid of my redundant display of years there. So now I'm using based time ranges or time dimensions to always show me current and last year. So when I move into 2009, this view will move with me. It's dynamic now. Okay. So if you wanted this view to always be this year versus last, this is the way you would build it. And you would use that year-based months to capture and filter on current and last year. Okay. So now I'm mixing and matching a little bit here. I'm using my year-based time dimension with my months and weeks time dimension, which is totally doable. And again, I could still drill in on my months to get my weekly detail for each one of my months. Okay. So, using time as a dimension, this is one of the better ways of using time as a dimension here, and having that available. So that's kind of what they were talking about with the absolute time dimensions. You're able to just bring that in, year, months, use it accordingly, drill down to your month as needed. And you'll get an absolute time dimension for each one of your time slices. So your months, your days, your quarters, you'll have all those available. So for a period-based type view, which I just built, you'll use 2-level absolute time dimensions for years and the single-level time dimension for periods, which is basically what I did. I just was able to, use my single-level time dimension of months and split that up on a different axis, and that's all they're doing here. It's basically the same thing. Same thing for weeks, same concept. And, so now they're explaining the base time definition. So now if you want things to always be current year, previous year, you can even do it at the monthly level. Maybe I always want the view to be current month. Well, I can certainly do that too. So for instance, for this particular view, for my year months, so for instance, if I just hide, let's pretend that we don't have months and weeks in there, and now I just strictly want this to be monthly, current month. Well, one thing I can do is I can drill down to my months based. Notice that I'm at months based here, and I can filter on my months based and just select current month. Notice how each one of these are actually assigned a time. So for current year, I would choose current month of my current year, and I click OK to that. So now when I drill in on these years together, I get the current month sales. So now I've got current year, current month in the mix now. So if I just strictly wanted current month sales for this particular view, I could leave it at this if I wanted to. This is basically just current month sales. So now by using months-based, year-based, and months-based, I'm able to get what I want in terms of strictly just current month sales. Okay. But I think you'll use time more as a dimension, for trending and getting the time trend that you need. And an easier way to build that time trend. Another cool thing that you'll be able to do is to drill from one view to another to get your let's run the right view first. Hold on, bear with me here. Okay, so here we got a view. It's time range, because how do I know? Well, time range always shows your ranges in the column header. So if I double click this column here, sure enough, it's highlighting my time range selection down here on the bottom. So that's when you really know, again, time range is selected and turned on. So what happens if I wanted to see, I have a view here, now I want to see this view trended out monthly for these months. How do I do that? Well, it'd be pretty difficult to do and rebuild in ad hoc, and that's why we have this link here. If I click on that link, it takes me to another view and trends the data out for me. The data is already built for trending. And that's what we're talking about when you drill to another view. You have this capability of drilling to another view that's already built, and you're still passing the sales rep that you've originally clicked in on, Eleanor Troman. Well, that automatically gets passed over so that we're strictly just looking at Eleanor's trend and her numbers. If I go back and select another rep, I have to reprompt myself for that. So we'll pick Mark Fiedler here. So that changes to Mark, and then if we drill in on that report for Mark, we can see Mark's trend, and his is a little different. He's got two classes of customers, and his trend is vastly different from Eleanor's. So now I've got Mark's trends and both of his customer types trended out for me, so I could see how Mark's trending out in terms of sales. This is where I really think you get the bang for the buck. I mean, you start out with a view, pretty simple view, and you have this ability to, use time range as needed to do current month, current year scenarios, and then you can link them to another view that already has the trend built out, so they can actually see the trend. And seamless to the user, they're drilling to another view that's already pre-built for them and has those time dimensions already in the view for them. So that's always a really good idea, is to make it much easier for the user. In this case, and then you can make it that much easier for the user to see the trend of data. So I really like that idea of using the drill to view or hyperlinking to get that accomplished. So your base time dimensions, again, if you want your view to be dynamic and your years to change as you progress through time, this will allow you to do that by using the base time ranges or time dimensions. Sorry. The base time dimensions also come with the absolute year description, so you always have that available so that you can get a reference as to what actual year it's looking at. And then you can use that in the display properties. You can use that as your display properties as well, if you'd like. Again, just using months on a different axes, and then I did this for you. Now we're mixing. So now we have the absolute using our absolute months time dimension, and then using that with my based year definition up here to keep this current and last year always. So we're mixing and matching a little bit so that we can get a more of a dynamic view built. And then there's rolling time dimensions. So now you have this concept of your rolling time dimension. You'll use the rolling time dimension to filter a view, to give you a rolling scenario. To be honest with you, you'll probably use, unless you want to see the trend rolling, I would suggest using time range for rolling scenarios. And that just makes it that much easier for rolling time dimensions. Here we've got rolling in previous month. So this is always going to give us, in this case, we're using filters for our time dimension here, and we're strictly just looking at current year. And then notice how there's actually a dimension from a prior, or a month here from a prior year. And that's what the rolling does, is it whenever you're using a specific base time period, but we're not looking at an annual total, this is when you'll want to use a rolling time dimension. If you roll it up to annual total, it's not going to give you your annual total accurately because it might have months from prior years in it. So you always want to use this at the low level of time, in this case months. Using the correct time dimensions is always important, so whenever you have a view that shows yearly totals, you always want to use either the based or the absolute. Do not use rolling. As you can see, the rolling time dimension will give you a false or a bad number. So when you aggregate up to a year, rolling time dimensions will not give you accurate yearly totals. And again, that's because they have months in it that are rolling and do not necessarily belong to that calendar year. Again, more on that in terms of rolling versus based. You're going to have differences there. So whenever you want annual totals, you always want to use either year-based or year-months because those numbers will always be accurate, and as you can see, they're consistent. Your base year dimension, again, whether you use based or absolute, those will always match. Let's take a look at the rolling time dimension. Okay, so if I were to build a view here and then use my rolling time dimensions, where would I find those? Well, they start with the word rolling. So first of all, I have to turn off. This is a new view, so I have to turn off my time range. Okay, and now we can go in and get the rolling time dimensions. There we go. So we'll do like months. And as you can see, there's based, and you also have rolling absolute ones as well. So we'll grab that one there. And we'll grab rolling months. We'll grab both of them. All right, so now we have that, and let's go grab a measure for sales. And we'll add in sales dollars. And then we'll put something on our rows, probably just customer again. Okay, so now we go ahead and click OK to that. Now we're looking at the rolling time dimension, and as you can see, it's at the yearly level, and so we're probably going to get totals here that don't match for that year. If we drill in on current year, I will now get a rolling scenario of months. So notice how it's starting with March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and that's it. That's all I have for 2008. So for instance, if I want a rolling 3-month scenario here, if I select my months here based on current year, and I do a member selection here for current year, and I do current minus the previous month to 2 months ago. So we select that as our filter. So now I've got a filter here on current, well basically on my current month, current year. So this will actually roll, and I can always put a filter on current year too, but this will roll with me. And this is a 3-month rolling view. Now I could build this actually I could probably build this easier using, this is a good candidate for time range in my opinion, because I could do the same thing using time range, and I could probably build it easier, in using those 3 months. Okay, but that's what your rolling does. If I wanted to, I can also do something like this where I can put in, I can use my rolling months based and put that in my view filter. If I aggregate this back up to year, I can use my rolling months based in my view filter to basically do the same thing. Current minus 2. And now I've got basically the same thing I did before. So now I'm filtering on those 3 months of rolling that I'm rolling on, and I'm showing basically those rolling 3 months in each one of my columns here. Okay, but again, you're probably better off using time range to build this as opposed to using time as a dimension. I think the big bang for your buck for using time as a dimension is building out those trends and using those for trends. And it'll just look better, and I think it's